free as a motherfucker.
They told us Diddy was untouchable. Money, fame, power. He had it all. But just days before his sentencing, a federal judge slammed the door on his last attempt to escape. The evidence called overwhelming. The fallout, potentially career-ending. And what's about to happen next could shock the entire music industry. Sean Diddy Combs, once one of the most powerful moguls in hip-hop, is now staring down the harsh reality of prison time. After years of speculation, lawsuits, and rumors about his personal life, a courtroom has finally put him on the ropes. On September 30th, a US district judge denied his request for an acquittal and a brand new trial. According to court documents, the government didn't just present a case, they laid out what the judge called overwhelming evidence of Diddy's guilt. Every angle his defense team tried to argue was torn apart. Witness testimony, digital receipts, and even his own messages painted a story the jury simply couldn't ignore. Think about that for a second. This wasn't some weak case that relied on gossip blogs or social media chatter. This was a federal courtroom, with prosecutors laying down evidence they said proved, time and time again, that Diddy crossed the line. And here's the kicker. The judge emphasized that this wasn't a close call. He said the government proved their case many times over. For Diddy, that was the nail in the coffin of his last real shot at freedom. But that wasn't the whole story. So what exactly was this overwhelming evidence that destroyed Diddy's defense? First, there were the testimonies. Two women, Cassie Ventura, his ex-girlfriend, and another identified only as Jane, took the stand. Both alleged that during their relationships with Diddy, they were coerced into situations they didn't want to be in. Their stories were emotional, detailed, and disturbing. Then came the escorts, who testified about being brought into what they described as freak-offs. They weren't just talking in vague terms. They gave specific accounts of how these encounters were set up and what happened behind closed doors. And if that wasn't enough, prosecutors brought in receipts, text messages, emails, digital proof that lined up with the witnesses' timelines. One text exchange, according to reports, hinted at exactly how much control Diddy allegedly exercised in these situations. When the digital evidence matches up with live testimony, that's the kind of combination juries rarely ignore. Still, even with all of that, not every charge stuck. And that's where things get interesting. Back in July, the jury cleared Diddy of the most serious accusations. He was acquitted of both human exploitation allegations and racketeering charges. That alone shocked a lot of people. But don't get it twisted, he didn't walk out clean. The jury convicted him on 2 counts of transporting individuals across state lines for adult services under something called the Mann Act. Now, the Mann Act is no joke. It's a federal law originally created to stop unlawful transport for exploitation. Over the years, it's been used in countless high-profile cases, and being convicted under it isn't something you can just sweep under the rug. So, while Diddy dodged the heaviest charges that could have locked him up for decades, he's still convicted. And these convictions alone carry enough weight to derail everything he's built. And those convictions carry heavy weight. Here's where it gets serious. Each of those 2 counts under the Mann Act carries a maximum of 10 years in prison. That's 20 years total. But prosecutors aren't asking for the full 20. Instead, they've urged the judge to give Diddy 11 years in total, 5.5 years for each count, to run consecutively. Think about it. That's over a decade behind bars. And at 55 years old, that's not just prison time. That's the possible end of his empire. It's the difference between walking free and rebuilding his image, or spending most of his 60s locked away while the world moves on without him. But here's the thing. The government isn't just asking for time because of the convictions themselves. They're pointing to something bigger. According to NBC News, the government made it clear in its September 30th filing, Diddy won't be punished for charges where he was acquitted. But, they argue, the way he committed the crimes he was convicted of makes everything worse. The The prosecution described a pattern of manipulation, coercion, and abuse of power. They said this wasn't some one-off mistake. This was deliberate, repeated, and done with full awareness of what was happening. And when the government frames you as not just guilty, but calculating and abusive in how you carried out your crimes, that's the kind of language judges take very seriously. So the real question now is, how far will the judge go in making an example out of him? Which raises the question, what does this mean for Diddy's future? This isn't just about time in prison. This is about a man who built himself up as an untouchable mogul, someone whose name carried weight across music, fashion, and business. For decades, Diddy was the symbol of hip-hop entrepreneurship. The parties, the businesses, the flashy lifestyle, he crafted an image that seemed bulletproof. But now, that image is crumbling. Even before this trial, rumors and lawsuits had already begun to chip away at his reputation. Multiple women have filed civil suits over the past year, some of them settled, others still hanging in the air. Industry insiders have whispered for years about what really went on behind closed doors. And now, with a criminal conviction on the record, his legacy looks less like a success story and more like a cautionary tale. The businesses he owns, the partnerships he's tied to, even the music that made him famous, it's all overshadowed by scandal. Brands don't want to be connected to him. Fans who grew up idolizing him are questioning everything. And as the sentencing approaches, one thing is clear. No matter what the judge decides, the Diddy we once knew is gone forever. Sean Diddy Combs is days away from learning his fate. Will he walk away with a lighter sentence, or will the judge side with prosecutors and lock him away for more than a decade? Either way, his story proves one thing. Power doesn't make you untouchable. Not in 2025. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next.